We begin in Mozambique, where the 15-country Southern African Development Community on Saturday called on Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe to delay elections scheduled for the 31st July. A top Zimbabwean court had ruled that elections must take place before that date, despite concerns that there's not enough time to enact reforms that would ensure the polls are free and fair. While Mugabe's decision to press ahead with the election has plunged Zimbabwe into political crisis. CCTV's Julie Shai reports.
As leaders from the Southern African Development Community were warmly greeted to the drumbeat of Mozambican dancers, the day's agenda was anything but festive for the heads of state. Southern African leaders were tasked once again with pulling Zimbabwe back from the political abyss amid uncertainty over the upcoming general election. Zimbabwean Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai arrived at the summit determined to challenge SADC to ensure that the country's elections are free and above reproach. A tough meeting that raises the question if SADC as a regional bloc is able to enforce democratic principles and help the unsettled power-sharing government between Robert Mugabe and Morgan Tsvangirai.
We are hoping that SADC can be able to stand on the grounds that it has been standing pretty much for the last 4 years, demanding a credible election in Zimbabwe that is free and fair. The only way that that can be done is through following through on agreements that have been made here at SADC, following through and ensuring that the next election abides by SADC's own standards.
Several questions still remain to be answered after this extraordinary meeting here in Maputo. Questions such as where will the $132 million funding come for these next elections, and will these elections be free, fair and non-violent? Julie Shire, CCTV News in Maputo, Mozambique.
Well, news just in says Zimbabwe's ZANU-PF party has agreed to ask the country's constitutional court to extend the date for elections in Zimbabwe. ZANU-PF's been taking part in the SADC summit in Maputo, where Southern African leaders earlier asked Justice Minister Patrick Chinamasa, the chief ZANU-PF negotiator, to ask for a 14-day extension. CCTV's Farai Mwakatuya now looks at the road to the poll and what lies ahead.
SADC has been mediating Zimbabwe's politics since 2008 and was instrumental in bringing together rival political parties to craft a new constitution which was passed in a March 16th referendum. The new charter was a prerequisite for elections. Under the new dispensation, the country is expected to hold credible polls, avoiding a repeat of disputed elections of 2008. The mandate of the current government expires on June 29th, which has precipitated the push for early polls. SADC's Maputo resolution has elicited mixed reactions. Some welcome the regional bloc's rare tough stance against President Mugabe, while others argue it could have a detrimental impact.
It is problematic in that there are possibilities that the Constitutional Court will uphold its ruling. And if that happens, then we are back to square one, but in a much more complicated manner now.
The MDC is the perceived biggest winner in Maputo. However, analysts say the resolution is a minor dent to Mugabe, who is likely to press on with his plans.
You talk about the rule of law. What is the rule of law? Is it not to follow the decisions or dictates of your judiciary system? Once the courts have made a decision, you have to abide by it.
In the event that President Mugabe has his way, it's not clear whether the MDC would participate in an election. However, analysts I spoke to believe the MDC would contest the elections even if their expectations are not met.
Non-participation, in my view, is more dangerous than participating. You know, it will actually be easy for ZANU-PF to handle a poll boycott than to handle a contested election.
I see some sections of the MDC wanting to pull out of the election, obviously saying that it is not in accordance with the roadmap. But at the same time, there are quite a number in the MDC who believe that despite this the status quo, they still command so much following, so much that they can win outright. I mean, if the elections is held today.
Well, the next few days are critical here. The Constitutional Court is expected to receive the appeal early in the week and make their ruling thereafter. That ruling has a significant bearing on determining the future of this country, potentially breaking the deadlock or plunging Zimbabwe into even more disagreement. Farai Mwakutuya, CCTV, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Well, Africa Live takes a quick break. When we return, enhancing trade, Central African leaders agreed to waive visa fees to boost cross-border trade. And cracking the whip, Ghana battles with illegal miners.
Breaking news. Global trends. CCTV News brings you stories with the different aspects of Africa in the international content. With our reporters across Africa and all over the world, we'll tell you about the real Africa and how it impacts the world. Africa Live, every day, only on CCTV News.
Welcome back. 6 African leaders under the regional economic grouping, the Economic Community for Central African States, have concluded their discussions in the Gabonese capital, Libreville, with 2 major policy commitments announced. Cameroon, the Central African Republic, Chad, Equatorial Guinea, Republic of the Congo and the host Gabon have agreed to have visa-free travel in CIMEC member states. The abolishment of visa requirements for all citizens of CIMEC is expected to be implemented by 1st January 2014. The heads of state and government have also resolved to put in place new measures to support the pharmaceutical industry in the regional bloc. The CIMEC summit's been taking place in Libreville alongside the New York Forum, where over 1,000 business and political leaders have been in attendance. Now, for more details on the just concluded CIMEC Heads of State Summit, we're now joined live by CCTV's Beatrice Marshall. Beatrice, now that the summit has come to an end, can you tell us more about the key issues discussed by the leaders in attendance?
Famida, thank you very much. Indeed, the New York Forum on Africa is coming to a close. At the moment, behind me in that hall, Gabon's President Omar Ali Bongo Ondimba and his Cote d'Ivoire counterpart Alassane Ouattara are currently closing that forum. Well, there have been over 1,000 business leaders, politicians, Africa's ministers of trade and industry, and they have been discussing how to further boost investment on the continent. There have been discussions on infrastructure, on agriculture, on Africa's mining and on Africa's oil industry. The common perception here, of course, is Africa is the new economic frontier, but how will you attract that investment that will boost the continent to the next level? Well, there were some key issues here that were put across, and of importance, of course, is the fact that Africa is now calling for industrialization of the continent. They are saying that by 2020, they would like to see a situation where Africa is no longer just an exporter of raw materials, but a manufacturer of its own raw materials. They have given a timeline of 2020 for that to happen. Well, President Ondimba here in Gabon did speak with us with CCTV earlier on, and he said there was now a major push by African countries to ensure that with industrialization on the forefront of the continent's agendas, it will mean more job employment for the continent burgeoning youth. Famida?
Now, Beatrice, as we mentioned earlier, the New York Forum was also taking place on the sidelines of the summit. Can you give us some idea of what emerged at that forum?
Indeed, Famida, now the Central African leaders held a summit here on the sidelines of the New York Forum on Africa. And one of the issues they were discussing was the instability in the Central African region, which they said was causing instability in the whole region. Now, the leaders here passed some resolutions, which included sending troops and sending financial assistance to the Central African Republic in a bid to bolster and stabilize that country to ensure that long-term solutions and short-term solutions solutions were also met. Now, President Ondimba spoke with me earlier on, and he said that the regional leaders here were concerned that unless the regional leaders and regional countries themselves found long-term and short-term solutions for the Central African Republic, it was becoming a little bit more difficult to ask the entire continent to assist in stabilizing the Central African Republic. They have also talked about boosting inter-regional trade, boosting regional integration. And one of the issues that they want to do is to ensure that there will not be no more visa restrictions for the residents of the Central African Republic countries. And this, they say, will ensure that regional integration is further boosted. Of course, Famida, you will remember that the entire continent is now pushing for intra-Africa trade, and they're talking about a continental trade, a continental body, a free market, so to speak, by the year 2017. And one of the issues they're saying, of course, is that there needs to be a boost of the regional economic communities to ensure that that continental restriction is no longer there by the year 2017. Famida?
All right, we have Beatrice Marshall there live from Libreville, Gabon. Thank you very much for your time, looking at some key issues, including regional integration. Now, under the theme, eliminating harmful social and cultural practices affecting children, our collective responsibility, the African Union and partners celebrated the 23rd day of the African Child in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. DAC 2013 aims to draw attention to harmful social and cultural practices against children. It also hopes to highlight the roles and responsibilities of various stakeholders. But as CCTV's Robert Nagila reports, despite some successes, the continent still has a long way to go.
37 years ago on this day, thousands of black children in Soweto marched in a column more than a kilometer long. They were protesting the poor quality of education black children received under the apartheid system. What followed shocked the entire world. Hundreds of children were shot and killed by police in protests that continued for 2 weeks. And as the day honors those who participated in the Soweto uprising, it also raises awareness of the continuing need for improvement of the education and welfare of African children. New statistics published by UNESCO say Nigeria has the greatest number of children out of school, about 59 million in total. But while the figures may be alarming, it's not all doom and gloom across the African continent. Countries like Ghana, Rwanda, Malawi, Ethiopia, Uganda and Tanzania are on target to achieving multiple targets in the Millennium Development Goals to reduce child mortality, eradicate poverty and hunger, and achieve universal primary education for all by 2015. But perhaps the biggest hurdle faced by children is conflict. In the Central African Republic, about 2 million children have been directly affected by the recent fighting. The African Union says, while law reform and child-friendly policies are important, they're insufficient on their own in guaranteeing the safety of children. The organization says protecting children from all forms of violence is an imperative of human rights. Robert Nagilo, CCTV, Nairobi.
Now, as former South African President Nelson Mandela spent a 9th day in hospital on Sunday, recovering from a lung infection, some early morning joggers running near his house in the Johannesburg suburb of Houghton wished the 94-year-old statesman a happy Father's Day. Meanwhile, churches across the country led prayers for the former leader.
As the world was marking Father's Day on Sunday, ailing former President of South Africa Nelson Mandela received happy wishes from morning joggers, even as the rest of the world celebrated the day in different ways. One runner said Mandela's legacy inspired him to run up a nearby hill.
Well, it gives us inspiration to know that Tata was our father, and we run up here every morning past his house, and it gives us strength to get up this hill, believe it or not. And when we see the sun coming up, we pray for him every day. It's just beautiful to be here and to thank him for all he's done for us. God bless him, he's a great man.
Another jogger wished Mandela, who many regard as the father of the nation, a wonderful Father's Day.
Mandela being the father of our nation, I wish him a wonderful Father's Day. I hope that his family is with him, and I'm sure the whole nation, being his children, will be thinking of him and will be praying for him.
Meanwhile, in Soweto on Sunday, the congregation of the Regina Mundi Church sent prayers asking that Mandela makes a speedy recovery following his recent hospitalization.
I can say to him, Happy Father's Day. God must be with him. We are also with him on the prayers.
A day earlier, Mandela's grandson said the former leader's health had improved as he continues to recover from a lung infection. Mandela Mandela said that when he left his grandfather in Pretoria on Saturday before heading to Kunu for a family funeral, there was a visible improvement in his health. Robert Soy, CCTV.
Now, Sunday, the continent also marked Day of the African Child. NGOs in the Democratic Republic of Congo are calling for urgent action as an alarming number of children in the east of the country are turning their backs on school. As Clementine Logan reports, they're instead working in mines.
This is a low-tech coltan mine near Rubeya in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Among its workforce are many children, some under the age of 10. According to the World Bank, some 40% of the 2 million people working in DRC's makeshift mines are children. Some claim the problem's due to a lack of education, leaving them little choice in their fight to survive.
I don't study, my job is to dig for minerals.
Failure to invest in schools and education has also forced some out of the teaching profession. Now some local NGOs are calling for action.
It's a deplorable situation that needs some analysis and solutions to be found. Children should not be working in mines, they should be at school. Unfortunately, there aren't schools in this zone, and the ones that there are in an advanced state of decay. The solution is to build schools and improve teachers' salaries, so the children leave the quarries and go to school.
Coltan is used in most electronic devices, from mobile phones to jet engines, and demand is soaring. Children here use their bare hands to sift through dirt for the mineral. According to child protection charities, this work poses serious risks to their long-term health.
Children who are exposed to working in hazardous conditions will acquire quite serious medical conditions as a result, asthma, respiratory problems. The fact that they are likely not to have easy access to medical care can also compound that.
Under the Congolese Labour Code, it's illegal to employ children in the mining sector. But in Rubeya, there appears to be a culture of denial.
You can witness it. You can visit the mines. There are no children at this mine.
Up to 90% of mining activity in DRC is low-skilled and artisanal. And until long-term solutions are found, many more children will find themselves digging for coltan and other minerals rather than studying at school. Clementine Logan, CCTV.
Ghana has for the past few weeks been grappling with the invasion of the small-scale mining sector by foreigners. The government argues the miners have been using heavy machinery, which are essentially illegal, and the effects have been devastating to the environment. CCTV's Panina Kariba has more.
This is Dominase area in Central Region, one of the many gold-rich regions here in Ghana. Now, just early last year, locals say this place was covered with green lush thickets. But within that short period of time, the landscape has been significantly altered, and all there is now are just open pits and abandoned equipments.
This place was very bushy, very greenish area environment. This area, they plant cocoa. Yes. For now, you can see they have room, taking almost all the cocoa away.
These are the shanties that the miners used as their home. Inside, clear indications of the squalid conditions in which they lived. This is what they used as a bed. Locals tell us about 15 miners shared this space. But even though they're gone now, the dangers of the activities still lurk.
They have left this space uncovered. The children, it's a death trap to the children around this community. And even the school is closer. If you leave these children, they play, others do not even unconscious. Somebody can come and then fall into this pit, and then there will be a whole lot of problem in this community.
But as the government tries to deal with the menace plaguing this sector, it is also acknowledging existing loopholes.
The information we have is that some of the people that have come from China have come, that they have been deceived in a way to come here for the wrong reason.
What I heard is the blacks in this community, they buy the land, then they hand it over to them.
Ghana's government insists its relationship with China remains intact and that both countries are committed to finding an amicable solution to this problem. Penina Karibe, CCTV, in the central region of Ghana.
Now, for more on the story, we speak to CCTV's Penina Karibe, who's on the line from Accra, Ghana. Penina, has the government at this point managed to flush out all the illegal miners?
Well, Samira, it's a developing situation, and it's been extremely difficult to actually keep tabs on the exact numbers of illegal miners who've either been arrested or who've left this mine. And it's also been quite difficult to know the exact numbers of illegal miners who've been here. But what I can tell you is we are at a town called Timasi in the Ashanti region, a very well-known gold-rich region here in Ghana. And just this morning, local authorities were telling us that this week they've arrested about 134 illegal miners. Now, they were stressing these are not just Chinese nationals. It's a mix of Nigerians, Malians, Burkinabes, and even Americans. And now we understand that there's another 476 illegal miners who've been removed from the mines and they've been brought here to the town. But these are foreigners, as I said, of mixed nationalities. They have legitimate visas and are putting up in hotels waiting to leave. Now, what we understand from authorities is the crackdown will continue at the moment until they can actually be able to determine for sure that these illegal miners...
Now, we had Penina Karibe there on the line. Apologies, we seem to have some difficulties with the technical side there. That was Penina Karibe in Accra, Ghana. Now, let's move to Libya, where 6 soldiers have been killed in clashes between Libyan special forces and armed protesters outside a special force base in the city on Saturday. It's not the first attack in Benghazi by armed groups. On Friday, a group of protesters attacked an army checkpoint in the eastern city of Benghazi and burned several army vehicles. There were no reports of injuries. Last week, at least 31 people were killed and 100 injured in clashes between armed protesters demanding the disbanding of independent militias. Tensions have been rising between militias and the government, which is still struggling to assert its authority. The interim leader of Libya's armies consequently warned of a bloodbath as unrest in the city continues to flare up. A checkpoint commander described Friday's attack on the army checkpoint.
There were no problems at the checkpoint. We didn't bother anyone. Then we heard people shouting no to federalism. We then reported to the operation room and told them that there was a riot and what they were calling for. They ordered us to fall back, and so we got into our vehicles. Then there was a sort of backlash on us. It wasn't just about federalism. There was a riot and they attacked the vehicles.